Everybody, welcome back. So, if you're just joining us for the first time, I'll give you a quick little recap. But if you were on with us in the prior live cast that we just had to end a few moments ago, it was kind of ironic that our main tech person had the tech issues. But Rob, sorry for the trouble that you were having, but it's nice to have us back together.
Yes, thank you. And sorry about that. Yes, the
No
technology
worries.
guy has the technology meltdown. Kind of funny.
No worries. But for everybody that is just going to be watching this for the first time and you weren't here for the prior edition, just to give you a quick rewind. Usually, as you probably well know, every Wednesday I do a Facebook Live to talk about some aspect of our financial aid system, to help you find more money to pay for college. At least making it more affordable without having to go in debt and stress yourself out financially or put that burden of debt onto your kids. And so we take some financial aid topic every week and we take it apart to help you, make better decisions, find more money, and ultimately pay for college. And on this episode, I decided to do something a little bit different because I assumed you're probably tired of hearing from me and seeing me. And so I wanted to introduce another very important person who some of you know well, but a lot of you don't. And that is Rob. And Rob is right in front of you on the screen. So we're going to have this fireside chat with Rob. And Rob is a partner, Pillar 6 College Planning, and he joined us a couple of years ago to try to solve a pretty big problem which millions of families around the country have every single year when it comes to writing those big checks to pay for your kids' college. And, anyways, we got interrupted because of some tech issues, but we were just talking about Rob's background, and I asked him why he pivoted from his prior career in technology to financial aid planning. So, hey, Rob, we're
Hey,
back. So,
yes.
I'm going to ask you that
Thanks for having
question
me back.
again.
Yeah, right.
Groundhog Day. So, for
Yeah.
all of our listeners joining us for the first time, so tell us sort of what made you want to leave technology and focus on college financial aid side.
Yeah, sure. And for me, as you mentioned, my background is a technology background, and I was really focused on solving big problems for companies. They would have these complicated technologies that had a lot of moving parts, and it was my job to come in and help them simplify that, to boil it down to really the things that mattered most and how they could take advantage of those things to move their business forward. That was really my background. And after meeting you, I saw something very similar. I saw a lot of similarities between what I was doing in my past career and the whole paying for college financial aid system. I mean, I looked at that and I'm like, this is a monster system. I mean, it is complicated. There's a lot of moving parts. You're not sure where to go, where to start. I mean, it was exactly what I did in my previous career, applied to something that was going to be very personal for me, in that I've got a kid that's going to be in college in a few years. So I've got to think, okay, hey, it's going to benefit me to fix this problem or to figure this problem out, and in the process, share it with some people. So that was really what inspired me to make the transition.
Well, and we're glad that you made the transition because for those of you who don't yet know Rob, Rob pretty much runs the entire, not just the tech side, but I think anything that is operational to make sure that you guys have access to courses and all of the, membership sites and all the technology, like everything works because Rob is making it work. Otherwise, you would just listen, to me blabber all day long and nothing would work behind the scenes. So, for those of you who have learned with us in the past or will be learning with us in the future, at some point, just know that Rob is the one that's making all the magic happen. Um, but one of the things that Rob had mentioned is the biggest reason that so many families struggle, to pay for college in a way that doesn't hurt them financially or doesn't hurt their kids is because colleges have just gotten to be tremendously expensive, right? That's the obvious. And everybody knows that. Rob, I think you knew that as well, at
Yeah.
least to some extent. But I think the thing that you didn't know early on is that the financial aid system is so complicated. Like it would be simple to say naturally, right, in your own mind, like when my kid is old enough and is beginning to apply to colleges, if I can't afford a college because it costs more money than what I have, it's reasonable to expect some financial assistance.
Right.
But the way that our financial aid system is designed, it doesn't work that way. Like if you start thinking about this when your kids are getting into college and that gap that you need to bridge, by then it's too late. Right? So it's
Yeah.
this you really got to start earlier. And so I'm curious, has your perspective or has your understanding of this whole thing changed since that very initial desire to fix this problem?
It has, and it's really, I mean, it's you touched on a lot of things there, but I mean, for me, one of the hardest things to wrap my mind around when I first started listening to you and working with you was it's not intuitive. I mean, it's like you can't just like, oh yeah, I'll go apply and be done. It's like there is a ton of things that you need to do, and there's things that if you'd have done them like 2 years ago, would have made a huge impact, and you can't do anything about it today. And I'm like, well, how is somebody supposed to know? Like, how am I supposed to know that 2 years before my kid is in college, I was supposed to do something? Like, no, I'm not going to know that.
Hmm.
That's not just going to pop into my head like, oh, is this the year I should figure out what to do? And so for me, it was like seeing that and then realizing how many people are just like me. They don't know or they didn't know that had I done something a couple of years ago, I would have been in better shape. So problem number one, I'm like, wow, how do you get to people early? Who's telling us this? Because nobody told me. I mean, and so that was the first problem. And then it's realizing that there's not just one place. You think, okay, I'm just going to get some financial aid and I'll fill out the form, get the financial aid. It's like, well, wait a sec. What if I don't qualify for this? Like, what if, and then I find out, oh my God, there's other places you can look. I'm like, okay, I was just under the impression there was one financial aid system. Like, ain't nobody telling me that there's multiple places I should be looking. And so it just kept layering on. I'm like, every time I talk to you, I'm like, there is a new thing. I'm like, oh my goodness, I didn't know that. How would I? Why would I? So for me, it was really, it was eye opening to see how complicated the system is and how little information people share about it. Like, I mean, I would talk to some of my friends, they would tell me a little bit about this or a little bit about that. And I'm like, well, does that really apply to me? I'm not sure. So it was a mess. I was like, oh my goodness, if I'm not getting it, I mean, why is anybody else going to get it? I mean, it's just, there was so much um, confusion out there. And when I say there's millions of pages of information, how would you sift through all that nonsense? I'm like, it was just, yeah,
Well,
mind
and it's
mind
also know
boggling.
what applies to you. I mean, I think you touched on
Yeah,
that. Is like you talk to
right.
your friends, right? And that's how we learn most of the things that we don't know. It's like
Yeah,
it's been a while since we learned in school, right? So everything that we learn now is more or less from experience, from our communities, from our surroundings, and so we tend to rely on our friends and ask them questions. We might hire experts, but it's what like this college thing is a bit of a mystery because there's plenty of really good college consultants, like
yeah,
people who will help your student or you as a family figure out like where can they get into college or how to improve their test scores or how to help them do all the right things so they can get into college because it's so competitive.
right.
But this whole financial side is kind of this black hole that in part because we can't really talk about this to our friends because everything depends upon our income and our assets. And like, think about it
Right.
for a second. How many people do you actually talk to about how much money they make and how much money they have? Like,
Yeah,
probably very, very few, if any.
right. No, it's amazing to me. And on that point, I mean, I've got our family has some close family friends, and we've been on the journey with them. We've known them for years, and we first started hearing their kids talk about going to college, and they're a little bit older than our son, and so it was fun to hear. And then all of a sudden, the rubber hit the road, and their kids like, yeah, this is the college I'm going to, and I'm talking to the dad, going, "You're going to pay what for that college?" And he's like, I don't have that kind of money either. So
Hmm.
it's like it is like full stop. All of a sudden, there's this big number in front of you from a process that, it was stressful, and their family, worried about getting into the college. But now that they got through that hurdle, the next big hurdle is paying for it. And I'm like, yeah, dude, I don't know.
Yeah, it's like the blind leading the blind, unfortunately. It's really, really
Right.
hard,
Yeah.
which
And
is why we're here to help
yes.
shed a little bit of light on this whole thing. And one of the reasons I wanted to have this conversation with you is because, I've been at it for 20 years in the financial planning space, and the last 10 plus years really specializing in diving deep in these mysterious waters of the financial aid system. So to me, a lot of these things have become almost intuitive. And so oftentimes
Right.
I forget, how technical some of the stuff is. And it's simple. It seems simple to me, but I forget that there's so many people out there who are like struggling to figure out how they're going to piece all of this together to not only send their kids to school, but to like pay for it, that I forget. And so that's one of the reasons I really wanted to have this conversation with you, because you have a different perspective, not only as a father, but also as someone that doesn't yet or hasn't spent as much time in the weeds as I have in the financial aid space. So I wanted to kind of put it back on you and say, like, in the last couple of years, right, what have you sort of really learned? Like, what were some of the gems? What were some of the highlight takeaways that, like those aha moments that you could share with people watching this live or watching a replay? And by the way, for all of you, if you have got any questions that you want me or Rob to answer, put them in the comments below and we'll answer them. So, anyways,
Yeah. And,
Rob.
and for me, I mean, I think there's a few things. And I'm in the position where I've got a little bit of time. So having learned these things early, that's, by far one of the best things you can do is get in front of this early. I think that the more people that do that, the better off everybody's going to be, for there's a family, for their kid, the less stress and more access to the financial aid system. So that was number one. But then number two is, even if your back's up against the wall and it's time, like it's go time, your kid's going to college next year, um, is know that there's multiple ways to get money. It's not just, hey, fill out one form and you'll either get it or you won't. It's like, okay, now this may work for us or this may not, but there's also 3, 4, 5 other ways that you can look for money. And I think that's one of the biggest takeaways for me, is to not give up and like say, oh, I didn't qualify for financial aid. It's like, okay, well, you didn't qualify for that financial aid. What about this type of financial aid? Or what about doing this or that? So I think there's that's exactly, don't give up. So I think that for the families that are early on the process like me, it's start early, learn often. You'll be way better off. You won't have that sort of panicked, oh my goodness, I'm stuck. And then for the families that many of who we work with day in, day out, it's don't give up, because there are alternatives. There are other things you can do when it comes to getting to that money. So those are the two big takeaways for me: start early and don't give up.
Yeah, those are important, because in the starting early, I think that's one of the biggest challenges that we've had. And so
Uh-huh.
this is a call out to all of you watching this: is start early. And it's been so hard for me, is less of a challenge to fix or help families find money, because I know it like the back of my hand. Like, the finding money for people is easy for me, right? And we
Right.
have great courses that you can learn on your own. You can reach out to us. We can help you one on one. So for me, that's the easy part, right? For Rob, that was like the part that made his brain hurt. The thing that's hurting my brain right now is, how do we actually help communicate this message to families, because you do want to start early. And that's one of the things that Rob just mentioned, is that it's not intuitive in any way, right? You'd expect to do financial aid when it's right in front of you. It's like anything else, but you really do have to prepare, because, for one, colleges and the financial aid system, or the government, they're going to look at your taxes or your income from 2 years before your student ever goes to college. And like, that's the income that they're going to use to decide whether or not you qualify for financial aid, and how much financial aid you're going to qualify for, which is like Completely doesn't make any
Oh yeah.
sense.
Yeah,
Yeah.
when
So,
when you told me that, I'm like, 2 years ago. Why 2 years ago?
right.
What's the made
Yeah.
zero sense to me.
So, families of high school sophomores, like you've got a tremendous opportunity, right, to start thinking about this. And if there are going to be things that show up on your tax return that you can avoid, that just puts more money in your pocket for financial aid. And then, Rob, like the other thing, remember, was about like finding colleges and the fact that
Oh,
like
right.
the financial aid system is more or less run by the government, right?
Yes.
So the
Yeah.
government decides whether you're eligible for financial aid, but then they leave it up to each college to actually give you the money. And like every single college has a completely different financial aid policy. So, like, if you think that, well, I just got to focus on the financial aid formula that the government gives us,
Right.
right? Like, I'll do everything that I can. I'm going to qualify myself for the financial aid. I'm going to structure my finances in the best way. And then whew, I'm done. And then you're like, holy beep, I'm not, because
Right.
then you actually have to find colleges that'll actually give you the money because they don't all have money to give. So, anyways, I don't know if that was something that
It was. Yeah, it's a
stuck
great point.
out
I
for
mean,
you.
it didn't make it. Well, actually, I don't think it even still makes sense to me. Is that if I qualified for money and I filled out, like you said, I did all the things right. I filled out all the forms, and I'm like, okay, look at this. The form says I'm going to get money to pay for college. I'm like, Yahoo, perfect. That's what I wanted. And then I realized, wait a sec, that college isn't going to give me the money. Wait, the form says I'm getting the money, but the college says no. That again, disconnect, brain exploding. Why is this the way it is? It made no sense. And then on top of that, I didn't have a clue that there's more than 4,000 colleges out there. I'm like, okay, I know the colleges in like my 50, 100-mile radius. I could probably name half a dozen. And then you start digging into it, and there's dozens and dozens and dozens of colleges like right around my home. I'm like,
Hmm.
so just the putting that piece together as well, to your point, that you do everything right, and then you realize, wait, the college doesn't want to play ball. No, that's that's not right. So yeah, for me, it was that was a great third lesson. It's that really know the colleges you're looking at and be open to looking at other colleges because maybe the ones you're thinking about don't have really generous financial aid, and learning that was a huge lesson. So
Or maybe they have financial aid for one type of family, but they don't
right,
have good financial aid for another. I mean,
yeah,
like this is a huge one that comes up because like we talk about this a lot. There's really three kind of financial aid profiles that families would fall into,
yeah,
right? The first one would be the lower income family. Like they're going to qualify for a lot of financial aid. So the only thing they really have to do is then pick colleges that'll give them a lot of financial aid, like
right,
traditional need-based financial aid. And the good thing is for them is that as long as their student can get into some of these really, really good colleges, even if they're Ivy League schools, they have usually the best financial aid policies, like for category one families. That's perfect.
yeah,
But if you're a profile two or three, you might not qualify for a lot of need based financial aid. So you got to look for money from colleges that have merit scholarships. And this, I think, is where the challenge really presents itself because some of the most visible colleges, colleges that show up on like the top 50 or top 100, they're getting so many applications that they don't need to incentivize anybody to come there. Sure,
right,
they'll give you like the financial need based assistance if you need it, but if you need money but you don't qualify, why would they give you extra money? They've got thousands of applications or hundreds for every single seat.
yeah,
But
absolutely,
yeah, to your point, there's over 4,000, schools around the country, and surely we can find 10, 15, or 20 that would be a great fit for our kids, but would also be a great fit for us financially.
right, absolutely. And those colleges are looking for kids that
Oh, yeah.
that's the other thing is you have to realize that there's colleges out there looking for great kids, and I'm not talking about kids that are football stars or baseball stars. They're just great academic kids, or they're fit a certain profile, and that's what they're
Hmm.
looking for. So yeah, just lots of opportunity out there that you don't
Yeah.
really think.
I think that's something I just realized we should put that as a tip number 4, and that is figure out what your financial profile is. Like, where are you going to get the money? Like,
Mhm.
figure that out. Like, what there's a certain path to get financial aid for a family that falls into profile 1 or 2 or 3. But the biggest misconception I think that families have, it's like, well, if we're middle class or upper middle, we're kind of hosed. We're just the financial aid system is not going to give us the money.
Right.
And I think that's false. Well, it's a half truth, really, because they're right. They're not going to get a lot of money from the traditional government-based financial aid, but there's plenty of other money that they can have access to. They just need to know where to look.
Right.
I'm going to put that in. I can't talk and type at the same time. Here are my limits.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Yeah,
think
but
you bring up a good point that it's, you really need to figure out what's going to work for you based on your individual situation and your individual profile. There are places to look that are more likely to give you money based on where you fall in that spectrum. So,
yeah, and I think that's the whole point of, or the challenge of listening to, and getting advice from your friends. Like, as
mhm.
good intentioned as they are, they're like literally no two exact families alike.
Right.
And the kids are different, our circumstances are different, their finances are different. And unless you're comparing two exact families with everything being exact and looking at the same exact colleges, your outcomes are going to be all different.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's another tip, is just listen to your friends, but don't follow their lead, because you might need to take a completely different path. So figure out your path. And by the way, speaking of that, I'm going to do a shameless plug here. If you want some help figuring out what your path is, or what your financial aid profile is, and where the money is for your family, book a complimentary call. After this live cast, we'll drop a link in the comments below, and it's a absolutely free complimentary 15-minute consult that we extend to every family, because we want to help you find money to pay for college and make it affordable. That is our mission. So use it, book a call, and on that 15-minute call, you'll know exactly where you should go to find money. So, all right, after that brief commercial break, we're back on.
Well, I just want to add on that, I mean, one of the things that I see from where I sit and why that's so useful is that a lot of people that they're coming to us and they've got, they're just stuck. They're like, I don't even know what to do. I don't have any clue. And just taking a few minutes to hear your perspective that isn't, I'm not one of my friends. You're not this person that's just throwing out these pieces of advice for, generic pieces of advice. It's really about who you are, where your situation is, and that's invaluable. And I know that a lot of the people we work with today, longer term, started with that, and
Mhm.
they saw the value there. So,
Well, I mean, that's exactly why we do these Facebook Lives, is it not because we have nothing else to do with our time, but that's the best way we can share, bits about the financial aid system, to help you all like realize that there are things that you can do that might fall outside of what you heard from somebody else, from a friend, or maybe from a college counselor. And that's unfortunately another challenge, that, if your student is fortunate enough to have visited with their high school college guidance counselor, um, they don't specialize in financial aid. Like, that's just not an area that they are licensed in, and not an area that they specialize in or know, and they can't even really talk about it. And so, unfortunately, it as well intentioned as college guidance counselors are, they just they can't give you the financial aid stuff. And so, anyways, we do these Facebook Lives to help you piece all of these little things together, so you can figure out what you can do to find enough money to make college affordable, which you can do. You just got to do it early enough, like Rob said earlier, and like, don't give up even if your back is against the wall, because there's always a little bit of time. You don't need, years and years. I mean, you've got 40 years ahead of you, even if your back is against the wall. So if you can't do the things for the first year of your kid's college, surely you can make some important changes that'll benefit you for year 2, 3, and 4. So anyways, I don't want to drag this out any longer, but if you have any questions, definitely drop them in the comments below. Book a complimentary call. That's why we do these things, is to help you. And we have a lot of other courses and ways to help you. But anything else, Rob, that I might have forgot to mention that you think would be a really meaningful piece of advice for families that are watching this?
I think there's one other tip I'd like to share, or one other thing that maybe you can elaborate on. And it's a question I get all the time, sort of in the background, is it worth me filling out the FAFSA? And I mean, I can't count the number of times that I get that question. So maybe you can talk about one or two reasons why, even if you don't think you're going to qualify, why it's important to fill out the FAFSA. Because for me, I mean, that's one thing I have learned is, yes, fill out the FAFSA, but maybe you can talk about why you should do that.
Well, since you brought this up, what is your take on it? Why do you always tell people to fill it out?
Tell them to fill it out for a few reasons, but I think the main reason is that even if you don't think you'll qualify for need-based aid, sort of the aid that the government says, like, you don't make enough money, yes, we'll help you, we're going to give you some money. There's the merit-based financial aid that has nothing to do with your income, has absolutely nothing to do with how much money you have or how many assets you've got in the bank. It's all about your kid. And that's why I tell people fill out the FAFSA, because that college that they're applying to may very well give them money just for who they are, what unique skills they have or things they bring to the college. So I tell them absolutely, without a doubt, fill out the FAFSA.
Yeah, I'll second that. Absolutely. I say the same thing. And the only thing I would add is that even if you don't think you're going to qualify for a lot of need-based financial aid, fill out the FAFSA correctly anyways, and fill it out on time or early if you can, because financial aid, especially the best type of financial aid, goes out on the first come, first served basis. And it's those families that submitted their financial aid forms early, they're the ones who are going to get the first pass at financial aid packages or financial aid awards. And colleges, as well as the government, only allocate a certain amount of free money every single year. And then once that goes out and is given to families that submitted their applications first, the only things they can give you at that point are either loans or work study. And while it can help in some situations, that's not the kind of financial aid that ultimately will make college affordable for you. If nothing else, it'll actually make it more expensive down the road. It's a band-aid. It's not a solution. And so even if you don't qualify for need-based financial aid, submit the FAFSA early and submit it correctly, because it'll give you leverage to then negotiate for better financial aid awards after your student gets accepted. And we've got a lot of other material on this. You can browse this channel wherever you happen to watch it. We've got some really good videos on that. And if you can't find it, just drop it in the comments below. We'll send it to you. But absolutely complete the financial aid forms. Do the FAFSA, even if you don't think you will qualify. Do it anyways, and do it as quickly as you can. So as of right now, it's December 1st. So if you've got a high school senior, you've got maybe another month or so. And I highly recommend that if you haven't done the FAFSA, do it right now. Don't delay. Take the next couple of days, submit it. Because if you don't, colleges have no way of knowing that you're actually in need or are even looking for financial aid. So if you don't submit the FAFSA, they won't give you much, unless it's like an academic scholarship that your student would have gotten anyways. So anyways, with that said, Rob, anything else before we sign off?
Nope, that's great. Thanks for sharing, Rowan. I appreciate it. And I really appreciate spending some time with you this morning.
Yeah, well, hopefully this has been helpful for all of you. And if it is, let us know by hitting the like button so we know that it's helpful. Share it with your friends. And if you've got any questions, drop them in the comments below and we'll answer them. So till the next time we talk, be well, be safe, and good luck with everybody, with everything.
Take
Take
care.
care, everybody.